You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live.
Hello and welcome to Garibaldi Red Nottingham Forest podcast Nottinghamshire Live. My name is Matt Davies and I'm joined with what I think is our first ever unchanged lineup in 70 odd episodes of doing this podcast, but by change, a successful formula, I guess. So returning from last week is Reds legend Garry Birtles. Hello Gary, how are you?
Good morning. Yeah, good, thank you.
Good. And back again is Reds correspondent Sarah Clapson. Hello Sarah, are you well?
Hello, I am, Matt. Are you?
Yes. Not too bad. As I was saying before, people who are listening won't care about this, but I've removed my beard and I've put weight on and it shows my chins. But the lighting on this laptop has gone dark, which is probably doing me a favour. So anyway, let's crack on and talk about Nottingham Forest. It wasn't to be a third win in a row, but they did pick up a point at Bristol City. Sarah, you went down on the train. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I think they'll be frustrated for us that they didn't take all 3 points. They played pretty well, absolutely dominated the first half. You'd never seen a more one-sided 45 minutes for a long time. I think Forest had something like 80% of possession, and to get to half time and not have scored a goal, they'd have been absolutely kicking themselves. Having said that, they didn't create too many clear-cut chances. That was perhaps the disappointing thing. They had a lot of the ball, but didn't really test the goalkeeper, didn't really make Bristol City work as much as they should have done. But that's the story of Forest season, really. We know where their problems are, we know where they've struggled, and it was kind of the same old story. Defensively, they looked very solid and didn't really have too much to do in truth, but up front, they just couldn't find a breakthrough. They couldn't find a way of testing Bristol City and getting a goal, which they would have deserved. And to get 3 wins on the bounce would have been fantastic. I think a point on the road is still decent. Away from home, you'd never say that's a bad result, but they should have won it. They absolutely should have got 3 points.
Are we kind of summing up the season a bit there in a sense, Gary, that they've got solid defensive foundations, but that lack of cutting edge probably cost them on the day, do we think?
Possibly. Again, I'm not one for stats, but I always look on my phone during the game to see, shots on target and things like that. And again, that was an impressive column. In the past, we've slaughtered them, not slaughtered them, but said, only 1 shot on target. They've only had 3 shots in the whole game. But at least, they are creating more and getting in areas where, they're causing problems for the opposition. I think you've got to put it into perspective a little bit as well, the result. I text Johnny Owen, as I always do on match days, and said, how didn't we win that? Because of possession, shots and everything. And he said, well, that's what a good sign that is. We wouldn't have thought we were saying, crikey, how did we not win that against Bristol City, a couple of seasons ago? So I think that speaks volumes as well, where we're going to, as a squad at the moment under Chris, that we are saying things like that. And hopefully that augurs well for next season, and hopefully with the signings we'll make, striker-wise especially, because you look around the Championship again, the strikers that have been making names for themselves during the season keep doing it. The ones who are around 20 goals a season. So that is obviously the place we've got to look. Chris knows that, and hopefully we can get somebody in who's prolific and will take the pressure off what is a really good defence at the moment.
Yeah, is that the foundation, Sarah? Do we think that Houghton's going to want for next season? Obviously, he's going to want to keep Worrell, but is this has he hit on the back four that he probably would want for next season, do we think?
Yeah, I think that back four, with Tyler Blackett at left back, Cyrus Christie at right back, and then Joe Worrell and Scott McKenna in the last 2 games, they've done really well. They've looked really good as a unit, and that's definitely something to build on. We know that Chris Hughton places a lot of emphasis on making his teams defensively solid, and that's a really good starting point. Arguably, that's Forest have one of the strongest defences in the division in terms of that they don't give opposition teams a lot to work with. The Worrell McKenna partnership is absolutely key. They have to keep that together for next year, because those two together just look like they've got so much potential. You just want to see it. You just want to see them play a lot of games together. We've not really had the chance to do that this season because of injuries. So next year, they need to keep Joe Worrell in the summer, and they need to get those two starting regularly, and build around them, because that's the perfect base and the perfect foundation to build from.
what about in front of them? It seems like Houghton, again, he's struck on the players that he likes. Yates and Garner seems to be, we know he likes Yates, seems to be the pair, Sarah. Is that what he wants? Obviously, we're on the same parameters that they want Garner to come back, and it looks difficult. But is that a pairing that would suit Forest next season to lay that platform going forwards?
Yeah, I think those two work really well. James Garner just gets better every week. Some of his passing is just incredible. He sprays the ball about and picks people out and gets Forest going forward as well. He's got that kind of that impetus to want to push on, which perhaps Ryan Yates doesn't have as much of, but he offers a lot in other areas. I thought Yates did really well again on Saturday. He works so hard. He puts himself about, he throws himself in front of everything. If there's a shot coming in, he'll throw his body in the way, and he'll make tackles, and he'll run, and he'll try and break up play. And then James Garner offers something a bit different. He's a bit more composed and calm on the ball, and can get Forest going forward. And that balance between the two of them really works really well. Forest do have other options, obviously. Midfield, they've got somewhere they've got they're well stocked in terms of players, and I'm sure it's somewhere they'll look to cut numbers in the summer, because they've got far too many. You can have too many options, and that's definitely something that they've got in midfield at the moment. If they can get James Garner back for next year, then that would be a brilliant bit of business, I think. I know we've said before it looks tricky, but they've got to try. They've got to push the boat out and try to get him back if they can, because that would be a great starting point.
True. If you've got any questions for Gary or Sarah, we're streaming live on Facebook, so do drop them in and we'll put them to them as we go along.
I just think that they complement each other really well, don't they? What Yates does gives Garner the opportunity to do what he does best, which is create, get forward, join in. And when you've got somebody like that in your team, as Garner would know, he can go forward with freedom, not thinking, I've got to get back here because my mate's going to be holding my back, and that's a great partnership to have. And we've got a partnership at the back where there are two genuine leaders, McKenna and Worrell, and now you've got two midfielders who complement each other well. You've got a goalkeeper who's possibly the best in the league still, but up front it's still the one place that we don't look competent enough to cause teams consistent problems. And I think everybody can see that spine of the team now with Garner in there and Yates, forming that partnership. You look beyond that, and if you get that right, then next season you've got something to look forward to. But again, I've been reading papers. Garner, I think he's attracting a lot of attention. There'll be maybe even Premier League teams, looking to take him on board. But I just hope that him and his agent see what Forest have done for him and say, right, you've done really well here. You're learning, you're getting regular football. You might not if you go to so-and-so in the Premier League. And hopefully, Joe Worrell can see the potential under Chris for next season. That's what we've all got to hope for.
One thing on Yates I was going to ask you about, Gary. I'm a big fan of his, and I've often said that on here. One kind of weakness or question mark against him, I think, apart from missing headers, which are quite easy to score, is his performances against
sitting there all nicely in the studio with his beard shaven off. Which are easy to score. Let me tell you, some things are never easy to score, because I'll tell you why. Yeah, it looks easy, but when you're looking for the flight of the ball and the pace the ball's coming in, it could take a minute deflection off somebody and make you look a right idiot. So sometimes, you don't see these little nuances. So I'll defend him in that respect. Yes, some of the ones you think, well, yeah, he should have scored, but not all the time. Flights of balls, you think the defender's going to get there and get a touch, and he doesn't. You're trying to accommodate for that and make yourself look a bit daft. So, rein it in a bit on him.
Well, this is why you're here. You're the expert view. For asking further for your expert view, is Yates, does he deliver against the top sides in the Championship? We've seen him struggle against Norwich, springs to mind, and did he get hooked at Watford as well? Is he quite good enough at this stage of his career to get you promoted, or has he got more work to do?
it's a learning curve for him, without a doubt, and you will learn from these games you play. But let me tell you, everybody struggles against Norwich. Norwich are the team that are just taking everybody apart. The most consistent team. Even when they're winning 1-0, they don't look like they're going to concede. They seem to be able to hang on to that 1-0 lead. They seem to have every, position okay. Every scenario is okay with them. They very rarely get beat at the moment. And, he's been thrown in there this season. He's had a bit of criticism. But I think it is a massive learning curve for anybody, whether it's the Premier League, whether it's Championship. When you come into a side, you're desperate to do well. And if you're not getting regular football, which he wasn't, that's difficult then to maintain a standard that is going to impress people, because Chris was having to change things around. He was having to have a look at, players in all the positions. And it's never easy for him to do that, coming in with so many players to have a look at and actually put them into a first team scenario in the Championship. So I think now he's got his team in his mind, and Yates seems to be part of that, and that will give him massive confidence, and you can only grow from that. I was watching I don't know if you watched the Masters last night. The lad who finished second, he's 24, first Masters. He went in there and he's improved through the 4 rounds, and feels part of it. And in any sport, you've got to have that time in there to feel part of it and watch what's going on around you and learn from others and take things on board that people tell you. And I think he'll do that. And it looks like he is improving, without a doubt. In front of goal, that will come. That will come. But yeah, it's, as I said, it's just that upfront problem we have that needs to be really assessed. And it's never easy to get the right strikers in, because they cost a lot of money, and you have to pay them a lot of money because they do the hardest job in the business, which is score goals. So you've got to look hard. You've got to look and say, right, do we take a chance on somebody, or do we go for recognised? I'd rather take a chance on somebody, because you look at the ones in the Championship who teams have taken a chance on from maybe lower leagues, and they're scoring for fun. If they get the right service, people say, well, at the lower levels, yeah, they'll score goals. But if you get the right service, as any striker will tell you, you will score goals at any level, I would think. So, yeah, I'm really interested to see how that progresses, and who they bring in, who they release. It's going to be very interesting.
We've had some questions, and Gary's led nicely into one of them, which I'll ask you both. Phil Malpas asks if Assombalonga is available as a free agent, which I think he would be. His contract's running out in Middlesbrough. Would you like to see him back? Does he fit into a Chris Hughton team, Sarah, or not?
He's a goal scorer, isn't he, Brett Assombalonga? He's done it throughout his career wherever he's gone, and we know what his record was when he was at Forest. I just think you shouldn't. Going back to somewhere you've been before doesn't always work out. I think
Garry did it.
Yes, yeah. It doesn't always. That would be my only thing about it. But I mean, he's a goal scorer, isn't he? So
how old is he now? Just as a matter of fact.
I shall have a look. I think he's about 28, something like that.
Yeah, I would say late 20s.
But he's not been getting regular football there, has he?
No. Well, my gripe with him, or my query with him, is whether he could play that lone striker role back to goal, or work the line enough. Whether he is, or does he need a strike partner? I don't know. He's 28. What do you think about Assombalonga coming back, Harry?
I was always a fan of his. When he was at Forest, they took a chance on him. It worked. It's a really difficult one with that. It's all about desire. Would he have the desire to keep come back now and put his lot in for Forest? Maybe you go fresh and go for somebody totally different. And what will Chris play? With the people he brings in next season, what system will he play? Will he stick with the same system? That'll be interesting as well. Because you have to be in a position next season to compete at the top of the division instead of being an also-ran and struggling. And to do that, you might have to tweak things. You might have to change things because one thing doesn't always work, the same thing, because teams get used to it, especially in the modern game. They look at things inside out, and if you're predictable a little bit in your system, then teams find you out. So it's going to be one of the most interesting summers for a few seasons now. And if Chris gets it right and keeps the players we want to keep, then we've got a lot to look forward to, I think, next season. But never easy for a manager to get the right players in. If he gets the right players in, everybody says, yeah, brilliant. If you get the wrong ones in, you get slaughtered. That's the downside of being a manager. But they know that, and we just have to hope that we see one or two strikers come in. I'm always one for, young, bright, intelligent, but they're not easy to come by. You can get maybe on loan. And do you keep Glenn Murray because of his age? Does Taylor stay because he's not really been, number one? Is Lewis Grabban going? We've mentioned this before. You've got those three strikers there who we don't know the future of. So if all three of them disappear, you've got to then replace them very quickly with quality. So that is, again, another interesting point to debate.
I'd like to see them bring a younger striker in. I think this year they've had all three. I mean, they're all the wrong side of 30, if you like. So I think if they brought somebody in a bit younger and hungrier to go with either one or however many of those three are left, I think that would work better. They've kind of gone down the experience route. Just if they can find somebody in the lower divisions that's got a lot of potential, that's got the best years ahead of them, that has got room to grow and develop, I think I'd go down that route. I think.
Well, I'll tell you what, Sarah, it'd be interesting. The teams at the top, the teams that miss out on promotion, look at their strikers. If Reading miss out, look at the boy at Reading, because Reading, if they miss out, are going to struggle to keep players, I would think. No disrespect. And then Forest becomes a very much better proposition than maybe somewhere else, because they can see Chris Hughton's in charge, they can see the potential, they can see the owners, they can see the football club as a whole, and hopefully agents will tell them that, and that might attract because Chris will attract players because of his track record. And I would be looking at that very seriously, the teams that miss out, and if their strikers don't want to stay at that particular club, then go for them. Break the bank a little bit, because I think that's what you need to do. I think you need to break the bank to get that quality in there to be able to compete.
Yeah, some of the names coming up. I mean, people are saying Luke Jeffcott from Gregor, and Richard Ottaway said Corey Woodrow. He's done very well at Barnsley. Lawrence Shankland's perennially linked with Forest, I should say. So yeah, someone like that maybe. I mean, one player I was going to ask about, Gary touched
quickly,
there.
Matt, the boy at West Ham who scored at the weekend against Leicester, who was at Hull, was he?
Jared Bowen.
Yeah,
Bowen.
I mean, they took a chance with him, and he's come in and done a great job. He got man of the match, on against Leicester City. So it's about taking chances sometimes.
Gary mentioned Lyle Taylor there. I think there was some kind of conjecture about whether he would have been in the squad at Bristol City, but for Amiobi's injury, and he got on the pitch. But is he does he feel like he's on the way out, Sarah? It doesn't feel like the same Lyle Taylor that we had at the start of the season, where he was hustling and bustling and making life difficult for defenders. Is his star waning a bit, do you think?
Yeah, I think you'd have to say there's a bit of a question mark about his future. He's been third choice at times this season. I know he obviously came on Saturday, but previously Glenn Murray's come on ahead of him. Lewis Grabban has been first choice when he's fit. And then it's a battle between Murray and Taylor to provide backup from the bench. And Chris Hughton seems to have favoured Glenn Murray. I guess perhaps because he knows him a bit better as well. That probably counts for something. But I don't think Lyle Taylor's made the impact that it was hoped he would when he signed in the summer. He's top goal scorer, or joint top goal scorer with Lewis Grabban, but both of them have only got 4 goals, I think, in the league this season, which isn't a great return. And you need somebody, if you're going to go up, if you're going to challenge for the top 6, you need to be getting a lot more goals than that. I think it is going to be interesting to see what they do in terms of the strikers over the summer. I'm not sure I would offer Glenn Murray another deal now. I think earlier in the season when he came in and he made a big impact initially, I thought, well, why not? Why not see if you can keep him on in some kind of capacity? But I think he's still got something to offer. He's still, obviously, his fitness levels are good, but I'm not sure he's what Forest need if they're going to challenge for a place in the top 6. I think I would rather use the money you would spend on his wages to look elsewhere, to bring in other players and to provide other attacking options. I think he can still offer somebody something, but for Forest, I don't think I would, personally, I don't think I would offer him a new deal.
What would you do, Gary? He's a veteran striker who's had a good career. Do you think maybe it's time to let him go, or is he worth another shot, Glenn Murray?
I like him. I've heard a lot of good things about his attitude, off the pitch as well, and that sometimes counts for a hell of a lot. But how many games is he going to play? That's the problem. Can you afford to have him, play a couple of games, then sit on the bench for 3 or 4 instead of bringing somebody else in? You come to an age in your career where you have to accept that maybe it's time to move on. Is he 38? You say?
Coming up 38.
38, yeah. I mean, you look at Ibrahimovic, he's probably an exception to the rule. Ronaldo, as well. But they're keeping going at the moment. But that's at a higher level. They're playing with, a lot better players. So it makes it a little bit easier in those situations. Your body tells you when you need to pack in. But I'm with you, Sarah. I want to go with the younger options now. I think you need pace. And I feel, I keep saying this about Lyle Taylor, I feel a little bit sorry for him because as a striker, I know you need to play consistently to have an impact in any division, no matter what, it's non-league or whether it's the Premier League. If you don't, look at Jesse Lingard. There's a case in point. Wasn't getting any game time at Manchester United, goes to West Ham. He's being loved. He's playing every game. And look at the benefits that he's providing for West Ham. They're in a Champions League place now. A lot of it down to him. They got Antonio, who Forest had. We took a chance on Antonio all those years ago. So it is about game time, especially for strikers more than any other position. And he's not been getting that. So I feel for him in that respect. And, you can lose it in your mind a little bit because you feel aggrieved that you're not playing. You're seeing maybe the players out there, they're not scoring either. And you thinking, well, you can do a better job, but you're not being given a chance. And that can get to you a little bit. And it can affect you in training, maybe subconsciously. You might think it's not affecting you, but there's nothing worse. Well, I don't know. There's nothing worse than sitting on your backside on a bench every week. Throughout my career, I was lucky enough not to do that. But I would think that is one of the worst things. I'd have hated it, no matter where I played. So in that respect, and I think the system might not suit him that Forest have played. It doesn't suit everybody. It suits somebody. What Lyle Taylor does, he does a lot of work. He chases things down. He puts in a lot of effort, which takes it out of you when you're up there by yourself. Lewis Grabban's a different player. He doesn't do that. He's one of the players who will lurk around the box, and if the quality's good, he's a predator in that respect. Whereas Lyle Taylor does a lot of good work outside the box. So, the comparison between the two is difficult to make. But I would just go for total freshness up front because 4 goals and whoever's top scorer, we've joked about the own goal situation. It's not good enough. Pure and simple, not good enough. To have nobody in double figures, with how many games do we play? 46 games in a season. That is incredibly poor by any standards. And to be where we are with that goal count, we've done particularly well. It just shows you the rest of the team are doing a really good job, defensively wise, midfield wise. But if we had that up front, if we had that goal scorer or another goal scorer, things could be so much better. And Reading have proved it. We keep going on about these teams at the top. They prove it because they've got people who score goals. And that's why they're there in contention. And we're, sort of mid-table.
We should talk about the supply line, I guess. Sarah, I saw your ratings at the weekend, and Knockaert seemed to disappoint when he came into the team. Where are you at on Anthony Knockaert at the moment? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was his chance, wasn't it, on Saturday? He's not started a game for a few weeks now. Obviously came in while Sammy Amiobi was injured, and you were hoping he was going to grasp it with both hands and really impress and really try and make an impact and try and create something. But he showed. I think the thing with Anthony Knockaert is he's got quality. He can make nice touches. He can play nice passes. He can pull out all the tricks and showboat. But the end product hasn't been there. That's been the frustrating thing. He's not created as many chances or scored as many goals or weighed in with as many assists as somebody with his talent should do. I think that's what he's been lacking, and that's what Forest need. Whoever they play up front at the minute is struggling because they haven't got players creating many chances for them. And somebody like Anthony Knockaert, that's what he's in the team for. He's there to try and help the strikers and give them something to work from. And I don't think he particularly did that on Saturday. I think that was his real chance to make an impression. And if Chris Hughton is in two minds about what he wants to do with him next season, I think he'll have looked at that and thought, I'm not sure he's really put himself forward. I guess a lot of it will come down to money and how much he would cost, what his wages will be like. But I think Forest need to get, I said it over the weekend, they need to get more bang for their buck. Then if they're going to spend a lot of money on somebody, you need to make sure that they're going to have an end product.
I'll tell you what, Sarah, I'll give the comparison with Garner and Knockaert. There's end product from Garner and Knockaert. I mentioned this last time. It wasn't my stats. I was listening to the game, and it was I think it's a Sky game. 28 games, 2 goals, 1 assist from Knockaert. I mean, that just isn't good enough. And yes, I agree with you. He has the ability, but I think at times he gets it totally wrong in good positions. He gets in really excellent positions, in his decision making in that final third. For me, is just dreadful at times. I think it's all about him at times. You know what he's going to do instead of bringing players in, to create things for them. He tries too much to go maybe himself instead of picking the right pass for somebody else. And, you can't afford to keep having that. He was brought in to be a creative element. He looks exciting when he gets around the box. I think that maybe confuses people a little bit because they think, oh, look what he's doing. The tricks, the step overs. But then you go beyond that, there's not a great deal there, or hasn't been so far. And, I was lucky enough to play with, you go back to, I have to go back because you Robertson, O'Neill, Bowyer, Gemmell, people like that. Yeah, there is a different league, but you always knew you were going to get something off them, that they were going to create something for you. And even at Grimsby, when I went to Grimsby, I'll go to the bottom league. I ended up at Grimsby. And Alan Buckley phoned me the other day out of the blue because he heard what was going on. It was great to hear from him. And we went through the team, and we had 2 wingers, little David Gilbert, Gary Childs, and we had 2 absolute powerhouses in midfield, John Cockrell and Sean Cunnington. And my word, did they spread the goals between them? And that was at that league. It was just a delight to play in that team because you knew that, and you had Keith Alexander up front at that particular point. And the creation in that team was just incredible. They made the right decisions at that level. It's about making the right decisions. And I just don't think he makes the right decisions at times.
If Knockaert's kind of curve is going downwards at the moment, Myton's seems to be the one that's going up amongst the wingers. He hit the post again at the weekend. Greg Oram asks, how important will he be next season? What do you think to Greg's question, Sarah?
Yeah, I'd like to said it for a lot this season. I'd like to see him get a real run in the team. I hope he has a bigger influence next season. I think he's really exciting. He offers a lot. He's got a lot to learn, but he's got bags of potential. I'd like to see him get a run in the team and really stamp his authority on it. I think these last few games could be a good chance for him to do that and put himself in the frame to be a regular starter next season. He's still young. I think that's something that you tend to forget a little bit, and you have to bear in mind when you're kind of thinking about his development. He has still got a lot to learn, and he's still got he's still a bit rough around the edges in areas, but he's so good when he's getting forward and trying to create things and creating problems, and he's got pace. That's something that a lot of players in that Forest team haven't got at the moment, and he just offers something a bit different. So hopefully he plays a bigger part next year. Forest have got quite a few younger players that have been out on loan that will come back, and the summer will be a chance for Chris Hughton to have a look at and assess them and see where he thinks they can fit in, whether he thinks they can be in and around the first team squad, or whether they would benefit from another year on loan. I think I'd like to see a few of them get a real chance. Brennan Johnson, he continues to do very well at Lincoln. Hopefully he comes back and he gets a go next season. I know it was very close to whether Forest brought him back in January. They decided in the end it was better for his development to stay at Lincoln, but just hope that in the summer Chris Hughton has a good look at him and thinks he's good enough to push for a place in the team next year. And there's a few of the younger players, I think, that will hope they're in with a shout of doing that.
Do you worry about putting too many young players in a team, Gary? Are you going to tell me if they're good enough, they're old enough?
Who said that you win with nothing with youngsters? Was that Alan Hansen?
Alan Hansen, you win
all
nothing
those
with
years
kids.
ago.
Yeah.
I think you've got to get the balance right. You look at Norwich; they've got a young team. We mentioned this last time we did the podcast. So it works for them. Doesn't work for everybody, and that's another thing you have to assess with the summer coming up. In who you're going to buy and who you're going to get rid of. That again is the one big dilemma for me. How many players will want to go, and will Forest have to pay them off to go because they'll be on good money and they'll probably want to stay. So that again is another point to look at over the summer. I think you've got to, in certain areas, you can maybe afford to put younger players in. Where Mighton plays, I think it's a no-brainer because he frightens people. In that position he plays, he frightens people. Sometimes, if you put them in defensively and they make mistakes, then they can get slaughtered if when they're young, and that can be a negative influence on them. So I think you've got to look at everybody's development, because everybody's development doesn't come at the same time. You can mature at 18 or you can mature at 21. Not everybody is the same in that respect. So that's all down to managers again. It's a squad game. It has to be a squad game, and players, it's keeping them happy. That's the biggest problem for managers, keeping people happy when you've got a big squad. I think you've just got to go out and say, right, I'm going to pick my 11. I'm going to bring these people in. That's going to be my 11, and I've got a very good backup if need be. And that's all you can do. It's basic. That is basic. To try and win football matches, to try and get yourself in contention. Mighton, excites me. When he gets on the ball, he's one of those who, he gets you out your seat at times, because I'm watching the defender, the panic in the defender's eyes when he picks the ball up. He backs them off. He forces them into mistakes. He forces them into rash challenges. And he's getting more and more confident the more games he gets. If he can, produce the quality, the end product that we're talking about, then even better. But the maturity he's showing, I think, is pretty good at the moment.
Jonathan Shanahan raises a really interesting name I'd not considered. Would you like to see Ollie Burke brought back? I mean, he's had a terrible few years, but he thrived at Forest, and he's 24, so he's still of a young enough age. Sarah, in theory, he could fit in out wide or up front, or has he lost too much that he wouldn't be worth bringing back now? And what would Forest will have to still put their hands in their pockets quite substantially, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I feel really sorry for Oliver Burke. It's just not happened for him, has it, since he left Forest? He's had a really tough few years, and he's tried a few different moves, and they've not really come off to the extent that he would have liked, I'm sure. I think he's still a really talented player. I think he forgot how young he was, actually. I thought he was a bit older than that. But you'd hope that wherever he goes, I think it's his confidence as much as anything. He seems, because he's been moved around these last few years and he's not really been able to show what he's about, his confidence is bound to have taken a bit of a hit. I think he's a good player. I don't think I would bring him back to Forest. What I would say is that I think Forest let him go too soon. If he'd stayed there, if he'd stayed at the City ground for a few years instead of leaving when he did, I think we'd have seen better from him. But again, that's looking at hindsight, and you can't change the past. But I don't think I would bring him back now. I think I would perhaps look at elsewhere. But somebody like what he could offer would be perfect. Somebody like him when he was who showed what he did when he was first at Forest. That's the kind of player that you're looking at. I hope he does go and find his best form, Oliver Burke, because I think he's got potential.
What's your take on that, Gary? Because you've had good moves and bad, haven't you, in your career?
We were talking about bringing youngsters in. The age he was when he went where he did, I think he got bad advice. I think, like Sarah said, he'd been far better staying at the City ground, learning his trade, as Brian Clough used to say. And when you go somewhere else at an early age and it doesn't work for you, that can't knock your confidence. I mean, I went to Manchester United, as everybody knows. But what a lot of people don't realise, I got a bad injury. It wasn't really an injury. It was a stress fracture of the pelvis that Ray Wilkins had before me at Manchester United. And you couldn't do anything. All you could do is walk. You couldn't drive a car. You weren't allowed to do anything. And I was out for sort of 2-3 months so it could heal. And then you lose things, and then you try and get back in. You've got to do another pre-season. So that was a big part of my demise at Manchester United. But when I got in there and I didn't score, I can remember playing against Manchester City and a ball came across at a really bad height, and I tried to control it rather than just try and force it over, hit it first time, and the goalkeeper came out and blocked it. And Seamus McDonagh was in goal. I played against Everton. I curled it round him, hit the outside of the post, and all those things build up against your confidence as a younger player. And I think that was a big part of it. But sometimes it can be a help going through adversity. If you're strong-minded and you've got good teammates around you, it can help you. And luckily, I came back to Forest, scored on my debut, and it was like I'd never been away. But it doesn't always happen. We look at Ben Brereton as well. He was another one who you think he was going to be, excellent. Then, he got played out of position. Then he went and didn't really get the chances he was promised at Blackburn. And it can knock your confidence as a young player. It really can. And sometimes, agents, Brian Clough always said they'd kill the game. And in a way, he was right. Because sometimes maybe they look after themselves more than they look after the player. And I think that's a problem. Players will listen to their agents and sometimes get it wrong. So, it's a really difficult one, bringing Ollie Burke back in. How low is his confidence? Will he ever regain it? Can he play at a high level? You look at Matty Cash. I think he went at the right time to Aston Villa. He learnt his trade at Forest and, looked very good there. That's why he was bought by Aston Villa, and he's been successful this season. So everybody's different, but I think, Ollie Burke went too early from Forest and it's affected him.
I like that idea, actually. I think it could be a good one in terms of a powerful, pacey runner. I think that's what Forest are lacking. Like Sarah said, maybe if they didn't go for him, that's the kind of player.
Linford Christie was a powerful runner, but he couldn't put the ball in the back of the net.
Well, we're not talking about signing Linford Christie, we're talking about signing Ollie Burke.
No, but I'm saying you can be as good a runner as you like, but you can't put it in the net and you're not confident enough to do it. What's the good in having a strong, powerful runner?
No, well, that's what we're debating, his confidence.
I could keep Usain Bolt, but I could score more goals than him. Well, he was a decent footballer by all accounts.
Yeah, not quite decent enough to play at that level, I think. A player you're a big fan of, Gary, that I was going to go on to is Sammy Amiobi. Do we feel like he's done enough now to get a new contract, Gary?
Matt, I had my queries about, I wasn't too sure about him at first. I thought, again, he was a player who seemed to get in good positions. He seemed to play well for 65 minutes or whatever, but the other minutes of the game weren't particularly impressive. But then I've grown on, he's grown on me a little bit because I think he's learning and learning still. You're never too old to learn in this game. And I think he's he's probably listening. He's getting decent advice. He's listening to that advice, and he's going out on the pitch and he's providing. You know, he looks a threat again. You know, every time, like Mighton does, when he picks the ball up, you see defenders all of a sudden think, "Oh, we could be in trouble here," and that's what you want the opposition to feel. You want to feel that, you know, danger from what he does, and you want to see defenders thinking, "Oh my word, he's got it at his feet again." You know, because I think he's capable of going inside, outside, and he will deliver crosses, and he will create for people. So I would certainly look at giving him a contract. Yeah.
Sarah, one player I was going to ask you about before we move on to the last few topics is Sam Bissau is the other out of contract player we haven't mentioned in the last few weeks. Obviously, he's a good player, and Forest do seem to be better with him in the side or the squad. But have you reached a stage now that Forest kind of just have to let him go because of his injury record and the fact he's going to take up a slice of the wage bill?
Yeah, I think it would. He's probably still a good player, Sam Bissau. We haven't seen a lot of him this year, and even since he's recovered from injury. I think with his injury record, the fact he's a little bit older, he's been a great find for Forest. I think you'd have to say that they got they did a really good bit of business when they signed him. But I don't think I would offer him a new deal. I think they have still got quite a few midfielders, and I think a few of them would be ahead of him in the pecking order, even if they don't manage to bring James Garner back. I think you just need some fresh legs in there. You need Sam Bissau's. He's not got the same kind of years ahead of him as some of the other players. You look at Jack Colback. I mean, he came in last summer and he's barely played this year. Again, I know injury has hampered him, but he would be an option, I think, ahead of Sam Bissau maybe for next season. It would be a shame that we haven't seen a lot of him this year, but you have to take sentiment out of decisions like that, I think. And I'm sure he'll go with, if he does go with everybody's best wishes, and everybody will think when he's had a good few years and served Forest well, but perhaps the time is right just to let him go elsewhere.
Set him free. Garry, one for you. This is quite an interesting question that I hadn't thought of. You can only speak from personal experience from this, I guess. But Richard Ottery asked, do players perform differently in April and May for contracts? Do we see you do sometimes see Matt Derbyshire springs to mind?
Well, I hope not. I sincerely hope not. I mean, I never did that. I just love playing football, full stop. If you're in football just to impress in April and May, it's a disgrace for me. If you can't impress in, the cold of November and December and January, and you want to impress just to get a contract, you're not part of my team. Never will be. That's not acceptable in any standard of football. To try and get a contract, it's cheating for me a little bit. If you can't do it in for a whole season, then don't do it at all. Go somewhere else.
Let's just finish up the last few points I wanted to put to you both. Sarah, Forest will due to play Huddersfield on Saturday. People kind of want to know when the game's going to be now because of Prince Philip's funeral. Have the club said anything yet? Do we have any indication on that?
Not yet, but I expect to find out pretty soon. I would think. It'd be interesting to see whether it stays on Saturday if they just move the time, or if they move it to a different day. I imagine it's been a logistical headache for the league as a whole and all the authorities. So I'd expect to find out pretty soon on that one.
Let's finish with some any other business, because Garry wants to talk about, well, I was going to say is VAR killing the football in the Premier League, but Garry, you want to talk about something else around VAR and what happened at the weekend?
It is killing the game a little bit, because these lines they keep putting across, and is his arm offside and all this. I feel sorry for referees in that respect, because it's been taken away. Some of the decisions, it's good, but I want to talk about the McTominay one. He'd been booked, he got a yellow card, and all the pundits said, well, it's not a foul, the goal was disallowed. It was just natural trying to ward somebody off. I don't think it was at all. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. It was petulance. And why he did it when he was already on the yellow card, I don't know. but he flicked out. You know, he didn't try and ward it off. There was a definite flick there. And if you raise your hands around the face, I've seen players get sent off for a little less than that in the past few years when that rule came in. He definitely meant to do it. He caught him in the face. Yes, he went down ridiculously. I mean, when we played, I was told, never let your opponent know you're hurt, even if it's killing you. And I can remember being dumped on my backside by Willie Young when I played against Arsenal in my first game. And it hurt on the halfway line. And I just got up, smiled at him and sprinted past him. And I was quicker than Willie. And all of a sudden, you've got to turn around and try and get back and mark me. You know, so I just try to distract him a little bit by doing that. You know, never show you're hurt. And it was ridiculous how he went down writhing on the floor. But it was still petulance from McTominay. Because if you watch it, he flicks his hand on his face. Yes, it might not have caught him that badly, but how did he know it wasn't going to catch him worse than it did? So in that respect, I'm sorry, but he shouldn't have done it.
Sarah, do you have any other business? Anything about people cleaning their teeth in front of you on a train to Bristol or anything like that?
Yeah, somebody did clean their teeth in front of me on a train. They pulled out an electric toothbrush on the way to Bristol.
An electric toothbrush, that's even worse, I think.
Yeah. Not sure why. Not sure why you do it in the middle of a pandemic or in normal times, but yeah, there we go. That was my train journey down to Bristol.
Well, yeah, at least we're able to get back on trains, and today we can get back in barbers and pubs. So that might be on my agenda for later this afternoon. The barber's not the pub. I don't think I can do that during work hours. But there you go. Thanks very much, everyone. We shall leave it there. We shall be back this time next week, probably, perhaps with the same two guests again, hopefully talking about a positive result for Forest. Gary, thank you very much as ever. Hope you enjoyed that.
Pleasure.
Good chat. And Sarah, thanks very much to you.
Thank you.
And we shall see everyone soon. Do give us a good rating on iTunes if you enjoyed this, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hope everyone has a good week, and we'll see you later.